All right, what's up? What's up? What's up? It's your boy Craig and them, and your boy KB,
KB.
with Brittany Morgan from the Miami Foundation. So today we're gonna have a little conversation about the great things that the Miami Foundation can offer, as well as what's happening in the world of commercial real estate here in South Florida. So I'd like to introduce Brittany Morgan, since she's our guest. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and the Miami Foundation?
Yeah, happy to. It's a pleasure. Thank you for having me, first and foremost. So I am the Economic Resilience Director at the Miami Foundation, and what that means is that I was brought on to steward a $20 million grant from Wells Fargo. Wells Fargo selected Miami Foundation to distribute $20 million to minority-led small businesses in South Florida to help them with the purchase of assets specifically. So what does that mean? Technology, machinery, vehicles, anything that you can touch and see, and that extends to commercial real estate. We actually made a venture to include property in our Open for Business program. So we're very grateful to them for this generous donation. Myself, we can get into that a little bit, born and raised Miamian. I spent 14 years in Chicago, actually, and I returned to South Florida to lead this initiative last year.
Awesome. And my boy KB, why don't you let the crowd know who you are?
All right, so I'm Khalid Bryan. I'm a broker. I own the Investment Property Gurus, where we specialize in not selling properties, but we go the extra mile as far as research. So that's what it's all about. We try to be the smarter agents. I own the AV Club Podcast Studios, where I help people start podcasts, make content. And it's I did it to kind of make it all full circle. So this makes sure that I consistently market and make content. So it's kind of like, how do I force myself to keep going?
Yeah.
I'm glad you're here because I have so many questions for you in what you're saying, because all of this, I had to build from scratch, one thing at a time, one camera, one mic. So I see what you're doing, and I can really see it. Yeah, one mic at a time. Bro, you know how many mics I went through? You would be surprised how many mics I went through just getting here.
She was making that reference to Nas, right?
Yeah. No, I caught that. But
no, we know that it's really costly, right? These are the assets. What we say, we have an entrepreneur in Alapata that he got an equipment grant to purchase new sewing machines, and a single sewing machine's what, $4,000, $5,000, $10,000.
Right.
Oh wow.
Those are those upfront capital costs that you have to sink a lot of money into. So Wells Fargo's theory of change, the Open for Business theory of change, is that if we can award grants to help you get those large sums of, industrial pizza ovens, cooking equipment, cleaning equipment, vehicles, for example, it'll have a dividend on your revenue that is unmatched. Because who has, an excess 10, 20, in the case of commercial real estate, $500,000 to invest into their business? So that's really what we're trying to accomplish.
Okay, and I can see the benefit to Wells Fargo is that if my business takes off, I got all this money that I'm going to now put in a hopefully Wells Fargo account. So I see the double streak of this.
Absolutely. I mean, I won't speak for them, right? I can only represent the Miami Foundation.
Yeah.
I would say that maybe could happen, but we fund folks irrespective of their affiliation with Wells Fargo. So whether or not you have a Wells Fargo account, you don't get any privilege in scoring or any advantage. If you choose to do business with them, that's, incumbent on y'all. I actually did open personally a Wells Fargo credit card earlier this year. And when I opened my account, I was like, do I get VIP treatment? Do you know who I am?
Okay.
But no, we're completely agnostic with regard to we received the donation from them philanthropically. We're very grateful for their support, but who you bank with is entirely at your discretion.
Okay, so you're not with Wells Fargo per se. It's just Wells Fargo is who's behind all of this.
That's right.
Oh.
And Miami's not alone, actually. 4 other U.S. cities also each got $20 million for the same purposes: help diverse entrepreneurs with asset building. So if you live in Atlanta, Charlotte, Houston, or L.A., they also have an Open for Business program.
Right. And so the Miami Foundation has the Open for Business here in Miami. And the Miami Foundation, a lot of people know them because of Give Miami-Dade, which just occurred a couple weeks ago, which was a huge event. How much money did you guys raise?
Yeah, we raised $34 million, but more importantly, we got almost 100,000 donations this year. And so just given what's happening with the economy, to see that outpouring of love, that there were 100,000 gifts that were made. And it's kind of like, raising money for political campaigns. It doesn't matter if your gift is $25, $2,500. We're really proud that everyone kind of showed out for Miami that day.
Right. And so the Miami Foundation does so many great things within our community. Rebecca Fishman, right? Lipsy is the ED. Is that what you guys call her over there? What's her title?
I call her CEO and president,
CEO,
boss lady.
Head woman in charge, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think she's been such a great advent to the foundation. She started her tenure in 2020 when, a lot of things were in flux, and I like to say that she puts the community in community foundation. Not only are we known for Give Miami-Dade, we're also known for our signature community grants program, but typically we're known for awarding grants to nonprofits, right? So Open for Business marks a new era in which we're also supporting small business development. And we can get into it later, but not just through grants and loans, but also technical assistance and business support. We've brought on about 10 organizations that help businesses grow with free, financial consulting, workshops, training. And Craig is actually one of our illustrious TA providers.
Yeah. So I'm happy. So we're having that class the second week of January, which is the third class in this round. And then hopefully we'll get some more rounds in 2024 where we can just go ahead and keep training individuals. So Brittany, tell us about what you look for in an applicant with the CREO program. I know you guys have different programs, but more specifically, since I'm tied to the CREO program, tell us about the CREO program and what you guys are looking for.
Absolutely. And for the uninitiated, I do have to run through all three of our financial products, right? Sure. The first is kind of what we say any small business that's eligible can go for. It's the grant for technology and equipment. So like Khalid was saying, this podcast equipment, the bounces, the lights. In our restaurant business, we see people who are looking for freezers, stoves. Let me tell you what we have seen, some just phenomenal things, the sewing machines, et cetera. So you can apply for a competitive grant up to $20K to get technology and equipment for your business, which is a fantastic opportunity. We're reopening that in March, and the deadline is going to be May 31st, so mark your calendars if you're interested in that. Our second financial product is more of a middle-of-the-road product. It's the 3% loan, which if you're paying any attention to interest rates these days, very, very low financing.
Awesome. Yes.
It's an incredible financing deal. That is through our partner CDFI, a.k.a. Community Development Financial Institution, led by Maria Cotto. So that you can get 3% loan for inventory, vehicles. You can refinance predatory debt. You can renovate your place. And so that's a really fantastic opportunity. And then the third and final product about which Craig was speaking is called CREO, which stands for Collective Real Estate Ownership. What we really saw last year when devising this program and meeting with small business owners is like the rent is too damn high, as they say.
Absolutely.
We've seen it on the housing side, but very few people are talking about it as much on the commercial side. Your favorite salon, barbershop, restaurant, florist, everybody's getting priced out, right? So we thought, if Wells Fargo is allowing us to put these funds into asset building, property is included in that definition. So let's roll out a commercial down payment product, right?
Nice.
Which, in my understanding, does not exist in South Florida. Have you ever heard of anything like this?
I haven't heard of it.
So it's pretty innovative, and what we basically do is we come in as that first cornerstone capital. We'll provide up to 20% of the purchase price. It is in a 5-year forgivable loan, and so provided that you maintain the property, you don't flip it, right? Mm-hmm. We know how Miami can be. Yeah. And also that you hold it in a collective ownership model so that at least 2 or more businesses have a chance at equity and accruals as that property appreciates over time. So as long as it's held in a collective ownership model and you don't flip it within 5 years, that forgivable loan is essentially wiped. And so this product goes up to $500,000.
Nice.
Covers up to 20% of the purchase price. If you're not using it exclusively for down payment, you can also roll in some of your closing costs. So we have folks who, you look at your closing settlement statement, you guys know, doc fees, title fees, stamps, so that you can
all adds up.
You can roll all of that into your CREO forgivable loan. And so, we're really proud of this offering.
Okay, so my question, before you move on, when you say collective ownership, can you just elaborate? Is that like me and Craig, I have to own it with someone or a different entity? Or okay.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So for instance, if Craig LLC and KB came together and formed, most folks are creating an LLC, a holding entity. Most folks do that for commercial property anyway. And as long as the constituents of that or entity that holds title are 2 or more businesses, that's a collective ownership model.
Got it. So it's not 2 individuals, it's just 2 companies.
2 companies, exactly. And we have all types of ownership models that we encourage for this. Yeah. So what's worked really successfully elsewhere, which we're trying to foment in Miami a little bit, is community land trust, for example, have existed for a long time. Yep. There's a steward of the land that promises to keep it affordable in perpetuity. The Alapata Collaborative CDC, led by Mileka, they're really doing that effort. They're one of the award recipients. So they'll make sure that they hold on to that land in perpetuity and then lease out or sell individual units. There's also a co-op model, which is taking off in North Miami, led by Catalyst Miami, where you don't have to necessarily even reside on the premises. North Miami residents can own a share of that cooperative, much like you would own a share of Apple or Facebook, what have you. So these are some of the collective cooperative ownership models we're trying to encourage. They're a little bit more technically challenging challenging to administer. So the bulk of what we're seeing is just traditional joint tenancy. You got 2 businesses, 2 entities. In some cases, there are more. You can have as many as you make
like.
work.
Right.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. And also they can be nonprofit, for-profit, a mix of the 2. We really encourage, as long as there's 2 or more businesses at the end of the day. The idea is that creating generational wealth through property ownership, we know how that works on the housing side. But if we're to invest $500,000 into a property, we want to make sure that it doesn't just flow to one family or one entrepreneur.
That makes sense.
We're
Right.
creating equity opportunity for 2 or more families at the end of the day.
Okay, so how long does this overall process take from the time I apply for this grant that I get the grant? Can I just apply and instantly start looking for opportunities, or do I have to wait?
Yeah, great question. I will say that there's like a chicken and egg challenge with the CREO opportunity. And we've actually been really responsive to the first round of applicants to change the deadline, to get a response out to them, because you guys know the market is constantly moving.
Right. Yeah.
So in essence, what we're doing is we have next year, we have a deadline that is the 15th of every other month for a window of time, and then we get back to you by the end of that following month. So before you apply, you need to lock down your collaborative, right? Who are you going into business with? You need to have really candid and frank conversations about financials, right? Like if you have not seen your partner's balance sheet before you go in together, I would advise you to have those
Right.
conversations.
Oh, okay.
We joke that it's a little bit like getting into a marriage, right?
Yeah.
You're owning property with somebody, right? And also what a lot of folks need to think about is that operating agreement, right? Put down on paper, what are all the things that are going to govern entry and exit into the partnership? What % of the equity share? If something breaks on the premises, how are we going to start banking together in the new facility? Have those
Right.
conversations up front before you apply. And then also get a property locked down, right? How much property can I afford? Craig and I talk all the time. If you haven't been on Crexy, if you haven't been on LoopNet before you apply, you need to go and understand what these properties are not only going to cost you on paper, but then the administration and the property management of them as well. And then also starting to get a sense of, am I mortgageable, right? So the Miami Foundation's putting in that first 20%, but you need to talk to lenders, senior
Right.
lenders who will secure the rest of the property for you. So a really strong applicant, they have an idea of the property. I also say don't get wedded to one specific address, because you see something on 7th Avenue and then it's gone the next day. Get an idea of 3 to 4 properties that are within your price range, the collaborative members who you're going to go into business with, and then also your mortgageability, if you will, with a senior lender.
Okay, so this is a situation where I want to go through the rounds, find a property, talk to a lender, get pre-approved.
Yes, exactly.
Then come to you like, all right, I'm ready.
Exactly.
Let's take this to the next level.
Exactly.
I don't just wake up and then apply for the grant and leave with
Exactly.
I
And
get
the
it.
best thing I say with CREO is come to us also and have a conversation about the feasibility of your concept, because people who apply blind and haven't even talked to us, we can coach you through, like, have you considered the shared equity component? We do have some folks. Another thing I need to mention about CREO is that it has to be in one of about 8 to 10 specific Miami-Dade neighborhoods. So
Okay.
CREO is not an opportunity to buy in Coral Gables, Pinecrest, Miami Beach. These are areas with like thriving small business
Yeah. Right.
corridors. Also, we probably can't even afford to buy there anymore,
Right,
right?
yeah.
This is an opportunity where we're looking at Alapata, Miami Gardens, Opelika, Homestead, Florida City, like places that many of which are historically Black neighborhoods,
Yeah.
and also places where investment has not typically happened, right?
Right.
So looking at these corridors and then understanding, is the applicant germane or native to that corridor, or are they looking there as an investment opportunity? We've had some applicants who have, no affiliation to the neighborhood. They're trying to buy a strip mall in there. Then they would become the landlords of the existing tenants.
Right.
We try to look at that really judiciously, because we're trying to create ownership opportunities for the people that have been there from the jump, right? I love to shout out Mrs. Janie Russell of Teen Upward Bound. She has operated her facility in Opelika for over 2 decades, paid the rent on time for 2 years, right? Or 20 years, and didn't have anything to show for it. So we were like, this is an honor of all the work that you've done. We can be your cornerstone capital. And she actually just finished purchasing the building that Teen Upward Bound got their start in 20 years ago.
Okay.
So yeah, it's full circle. So we try to be judicious about those things, knowing that we don't want to necessarily hasten the pace of gentrification.
Yeah.
Rather, we want to give credence to the folks who are at the greatest risk of displacement.
That makes sense. So I drew a blank. Sorry. Okay.
I
So
know, it's a lot. It's a lot
this
to
is
take
all right.
in.
That's what I'm trying to say. So this is actually like so many moving parts and so many things to
Yes.
consider. Is there like a consultation? Like I could just come in and speak with someone and they'll guide me along the way? Because I'd imagine someone who they may be qualified, they may be ready, but they still may not know what to do, how to do it, where to,
I'm so glad you mentioned that, Khalid.
Yeah.
So you can definitely come to us as the
Okay.
program officer and the funder and the
Yeah.
lender. But a big reason we brought Craig on board through Community Realty Advisors and Information Group, which also stands for Craig.
Yeah, that's his thing. I like it. That's his thing.
So we realized that there in South Florida is like no first-time homebuyer programming for commercial real estate, let alone BIPOC folks in commercial real estate.
Right.
Yeah.
I like to joke with Miss Russell's transaction, the seller's name was John, the seller's attorney's name was John. Like commercial real estate, if you look at all the statistics coming out of Brookings and the Urban Institute, the amount of Black and Latino owners in commercial real estate is like single digit. Right?
Yeah.
So we realize that we can't just make this financial opportunity available. We also have to have the resources, the technical assistance, and the know-how. So we're like, let's launch this, first-time office buyer workshop. And Craig, you want to unpack a little bit? What do we do in that workshop?
Absolutely. So the day will begin on a Saturday. It's a 2-day workshop. And so basically what happens is we come in, we start to talk about the different types of commercial real estate. So you have 5 different types. You have your office, you have your retail, you have your apartment buildings, you have your industrial, your government. And then so, this particular program is not necessarily looking at residential opportunities. Right? So it's not necessarily residential opportunity unless you can have a mixed use situation where you're going to be able to have maybe retail on the bottom and then residential on the top. But it's more so for retail and office, maybe industrial type doings. So we go through that platform. We also discuss what do you look for in an appraisal? What do you look for when you are valuing the property so that you can understand how much to offer, what to offer. We also speak about contracts. We have Shar, who helps us with contracts. She's the legal eagle, so to speak, right, for the Miami Foundation. And so she's going to make sure that you understand that you have the 2 entities come together and actually form an organization that's going to make sense at the end of the day, and what those operating agreements look like. And then we just finally we get down to looking at, what is it going to take to close this transaction? And then a lot of times, what is it going to take to close this transaction is finding the right lender. And then the lender becomes the struggle, right? The lender has been the struggle in this kind of like first round because there aren't a lot of lenders that want to lend to nonprofits, right? Yeah. And so even creating 2 nonprofits, creating a profit entity has become even a challenge. So it's just, yes, you do want to have pre-conversations with lenders and what they're looking for and how they're going to do it. But a lender generally can't tell you exactly how much you're qualified for until you get to that commercial building, because commercial lending is different from
Very
residential lending.
Yes.
So it's not like you can walk into the bank, you give the bank all your financials, okay, you're approved for $400,000, go out there and find a house for $400,000. Because building A and building B may have different cash flows, they may have different financials, and then so the bank is only willing to take a risk up to so much.
Yep.
And so that's the challenge that we look at when we're dealing with commercial real estate. But we do have some success stories. Tell us about TrueView. Not
True
TrueView,
Prep. Yeah,
True
happy
Prep.
to. And I just want to double click on what you said about the lending. That is such a great point, Craig, because you also mentioned, Khalid, the pre-approval, right?
Yeah.
We've come to learn that pre-approval doesn't even really exist in the commercial lending space until you have a property. So what we have is we have folks getting pre-qualified, like shows that you've had a conversation. In many cases, they're going to be a CDFI again. It's going to be a credit union. It's going to be a mission-oriented lender, because not only is it the nonprofits, it's folks who are getting a grant or a forgivable loan from the Miami Foundation. It's folks who need to project hypothetical what their pro forma is going to look like in the future. So we're actually making some pretty significant changes to the application this 3rd and final round to make sure that you're not just getting your financials in order for us, you're getting them in order for your senior lender. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. So I'm really happy to also talk about another success story, True Prep Academy. They actually applied twice. I'll let you know. They applied last year in 2022. We're not ready yet. They came in person for one of our in-person feedback sessions and office hours that we offer as a part of Open for Business, and really workshopped their concept a little bit further. They had their eyes on this property in Miami Gardens on the corner of 173rd Avenue for many, many years. True Prep Academy is a K-12 all-boys private school, really centered on athletics and academics. They run a phenomenal football program, and so they have had their eyes on a church that increasingly its congregation has been dwindling, right? So you look at this church, they're sitting on an amazing asset, but they don't necessarily have the capacity to keep it up as much. So they were able to go under contract. They ended up purchasing the church, New Life Baptist, and they're actually renting that portion of the facility back out to the church for worship purposes on the 2 nights of a week that they really need it, right?
Right.
They have big goals to turn this not just into a K through 12 academy, which they operate, but a community hub and meeting center, right? So this is a place where folks can schedule meetings, they can hold events and fairs. They have a beautiful lawn right in front where the young men are practicing football now. And so, I mean, I'll tell you, I visited their former facility. They were in like an industrial park and kind of operating 2 different floors, like having the vision for young men to go from like this industrial park that's like a duplex, like think of a place like a warehousey, to like this beautiful corner of 173rd. They have a gigantic lawn. It's 2 floors with separate stairwells. And then, like you mentioned on the revenue front, a lot of folks who are benefiting from CREO are thinking creatively about how to also have revenue generation on the property. I'll say that almost every single deal that we are thinking about financing or have closed on has a tenant on the premises, right, to help meeting that mortgage obligation. Sidetrack, another reason why we encourage collective ownership is it's a lot easier to meet that $10,000 or $15,000 a month mortgage when you have 2 or more folks contributing to it. So really, really happy. I want to give a shout out to Mario and Claudienne. Claudienne is actually a real estate agent, tenacious.
We know Claudienne.
Everybody knows Claudienne.
That's my friend.
That's
my friend. I love her. She's so great.
She's phenomenal.
Yeah,
She was really like, the real estate guru in that transaction. And we're happy to be a cornerstone piece of the capital. But like Craig mentioned, getting conventional mortgage lenders to bite on these deals has been a little challenging. I think some of them are nonprofit entities, a lot of them collective ownership. That means that you're looking at 3, 4, 5 different sets of financials. That's why I say you really have to have those conversations out loud with your prospective business partners before you apply for funding.
Right.
You go. I have too many questions.
So what do you find the most challenging for applicants when they bring you an application and you just say, I just wish they did this before they applied?
Oh, man. I got a couple of ideas. I do say that one of them is, some people are really pie in the sky with what they can accomplish. I think historically people have seen the Miami Foundation as the issuer of grants in furtherance of your mission. But with the CREO product, we are operating much more like underwriters, right? So I hate to turn folks away, but oftentimes if we do decline you for CREO, we think that it's in your best interest, right? I have some nonprofit organizations whose annual budgets are $200,000, $350,000 a year, right? They're almost exclusively reliant on grants and contributions. And it would be a disservice to encourage a small nonprofit to enter into owning a $2 million property, right? Simply the mathematics of it. The last thing we want is to force people into ownership when 2, 3, 4 years down the line, there's a foreclosure or a default at risk. And so that is one of the initial challenges. I think people are really enamored by the opportunity that they might propose bidding on buildings that are a little bit outside of their scope. I also say that we have not seen as many small businesses bite on this as I would have liked, right? A lot of nonprofits come to Miami Foundation for funding. A lot of nonprofits are in dire need for their own facilities, right? I hear stories, people have been renting for 2, 3 decades now, right? That's like hundreds of thousands of dollars paid in rent, and they could convince their own funders like this is a better utilization of our resources to help us pay a mortgage versus rent in perpetuity. But I would love to see small business owners come to the fore. I think when we initially conceived of this project, you see strip malls, right, where there's like 4 or 5 individual stalls, like nail salon, pet store. Imagine if they bandied together and bought out that commercial landlord. One thing we haven't touched on is a big reason we offered this product is because commercial landlords are pretty negligent. Yeah. They're actually more negligent than a lot of the residential landlords that you hear about. Personally, I know several organizations that the commercial landlord was very absentee. They let rain, the roof decay onto their property, their possessions. When they made an attempt to withhold rent for disrepair of the facility, the commercial landlord used that as a cause for eviction, right? Wow, so who's at fault, right? You let all of our merchandise and all of this roof and mildew and mold that becomes an environmental hazard, but at present, there's no redress for negligent commercial landlords. We saw some phenomenal advocacy from Miami Worker Center and others to really issue like an Office of Housing Advocacy at Miami-Dade County. Right. They're doing an amazing eviction diversion program, but I've met with them and their attorneys have conferred all of those wins in the housing space don't extend to commercial renters. So we have a big problem ahead of us. You know, we'll help in these individual deals, help you own your own building, but I think there's some bigger issues that we have to address when it comes to commercial landlord stewardship.
Okay.
Yeah, and so with just to follow with that, you know, it really comes down to your lease and understanding your lease.
Oof, yes.
And so that'll be a podcast for another day.
A whole nother day, yeah.
Commercial leases, but
please.
Definitely commercial leases are something that we need to take a look at, and maybe we can help. You know, those small businesses and small nonprofits that can't necessarily purchase, how to go through their lease and make sure they have the proper provisions. I would say that, listen, you definitely need an attorney when you're doing these leases. Us as real estate professionals can take a look and can guide you, but at the end of the day, you should have a bona fide real estate attorney. And I say it again, real estate attorney, not a personal injury attorney, not a criminal attorney, a real estate attorney. Take a look at your lease and make sure that they're doing the things that need to be done.
Legal Services of Greater Miami, I want to give a plug to them as a resource. They have money allocated to serve nonprofits and small businesses pro bono. But we know that this is not going to be enough. I want to put a pin. We actually are about to launch a policy advocacy agenda out of Open for Business to help with some of this commercial negligence, ownership, et cetera, because this program is about to end at the end of next year. How do we make sure that there's a legacy to live on? And you can talk to my colleague Brenda about that. We're getting that off the ground soon.
All right, we'll have to bring Brenda in here and let's see what she has to say about it. That's awesome. You guys also have another piece to this where you help individuals with existing businesses fix up their businesses. I think you're doing that through
the ABLE loan. Yeah, so that 3% loan, we have a renovation and remodeling use case for that. And in essence, you know, Wells Fargo said this grant money can support asset building. So what does that look like? Helping the assets that you currently own look better, right? So we have that 3% loan to support remodeling and renovation. A lot of the CREO beneficiaries can then, you know, graduate to that product, and you can get more than one OFB product. They're meant to be layered atop one another.
Nice.
But we always caution, if you don't own your own facility and you're looking to make deep investments in remodeling, be careful, because we have so many people who told us, I put in, you know, $20,000, $50,000 of my own money and sweat equity to make this facility look nice. The landlord saw it and was like, this does look nice. Matter of fact, I'm going to increase the rent. And then they basically, you know, booted themselves out by virtue of that. So we just have to be cautious. You know, it's really unfortunate that that's how it is. And so we're pushing ownership through CREO.
Awesome.
Yeah, I feel like the biggest takeaway for me from this is you got to really take your business seriously, because I can imagine you start this great business, it's finally making money, but if you're not managing it right, not managing your finances, you can't utilize all of these great benefits that are out here. And this ends the end of 2024.
That's right.
So you literally have a very limited time to like get your stuff together. So I guess that's the biggest thing that we can do as real estate professionals is just like outreach and just educate the public on not even like getting these big loans, just how to manage what you're doing now to get ready to do this. So
we see that a lot, even just the grant product. So the technology grant doesn't require as much financial documentation or due diligence, but we do want to see, you know, a copy of tax returns. And one thing we find is that people try to be creative, right? Like you don't want to have a huge tax liability at the end of the year, but at the same time, to make yourself look profitable to a mortgage lender to get CREO, you have to showcase and demonstrate some level of income and revenue. So I will say that that's been an interesting challenge in underwriting. You know, we want to reward folks for doing good, right? Paying into the tax base. But at the same time, like, how do you substantiate to a mortgage lender that you'll be able to service that mortgage in the future? And it's, like you said, Khalid, getting your back office in order, making sure you're up to date on your taxes. Have you paid your Miami-Dade County business tax receipt, right? Like, those are the things that we check for just to make sure that we're rewarding good behavior.
And that's a lot of things that people don't even know about, because there's so many startups. Like even me, when I started this, I just had an office and I'm like, I got an idea. So there was so much undocumented activity, and it's like I'm just now getting to this point where I'm like, I need to buy something, I need to do this, but I still have another couple of years of work just getting ready to let them fund me. And
formalizing it. That's why I touched on the technical assistance before, right? Because it's one thing for us to push out all this money, but not having the access to the know-how, the workshops, the resources. So we have actually onboarded an organization in each of those communities that I touched on. So if we're going to double down on Miami Gardens and Opa-locka, we're going to invest in a TA, technical assistance provider, to serve applicants from that area. So we have 6 regional, like if you're in Homestead, if you're in Alapata, there is a go-to organization to help you with everything. Look at your books. Are you up to date on your taxes? Have you even thought about what projections look like doing forecasting of revenue into the future? And same reason we brought Craig on and all the real estate expertise, like going line by line, clause by clause in a purchase agreement on a commercial contract. That's one of the best, I think, activities in that workshop. People are like, wow, what's the due diligence? And what, you know, like just, we want folks to be armed with knowledge, not just the capital. So you're going into it eyes wide open.
Yeah. And how would someone like find this information if I wanted to do the research to just set like a 12-month plan? How would I find it?
That's a great question. So MiamiOpenForBusiness.org is like where we showcase all of our resources. We have a page for each of those technical assistance providers. Like if I'm in X neighborhood, you can sign up for support. But you know, the organizations that we work with, there's so many more business support organizations out there, and people don't even realize. Like FIU Small Business Development Center, they were actually just awarded the best SBDC in the country. They were flown out to the White House. So they provide like free consulting support. You go to FIU SBDC on Google, they'll sign you up with a one-on-one consultant. Now I got to name drop everybody because you know, Alapata Collaborative CDC, branches in the North Miami, exactly, Milega and Santander, they do incredible work. Branches in the North Miami Beach area. Shout out one time for the North Miami government. Councilwoman Cassandra Timothy has been like a godsend to their small businesses, making sure that they have resources. North Miami CRA also has money to put into like renovation, storefront, just incredible work. I can't neglect my folks on the south end of the town. So South Dade is covered by South Dade Connections. We've worked with the Homestead CRA as well. I'll also share that in the Overtown area, Air Ventures, Opportunity Connect, all of these organizations, I cannot forget the Miami-Dade Chamber. They service the Miami Gardens and Opelika community for Open for Business, but they're also open to all businesses in South Florida interested in the chamber. And these organizations, we awarded grants to serve as the technical assistance providers for Open for Business because they were already doing the work, right? They were already looking at people's financial, you know, statements, helping their business grow, connecting them with legal resources, cybersecurity, marketing automation, etc. So if anybody is like, oh, I really need support, what I recommend is just, you know, raise your hand, you know, put yourself out there because there's thousands of free resources out there that just need to be tapped into.
Yeah, I have like a two-part, totally irrelevant to each other situation. But okay, so being that there's so many different platforms and grants and programs in every city almost, a situation like remember Sistrunk, they have so many grants to build commercial over there. If I have a grant from another entity, can I pair it with your programs as well?
Absolutely. We don't have like an exclusivity. The only thing that we say is once you get a Miami Open for Business financial product in that category, to please step aside and let other folks apply. So if you get that technology and equipment grant, you can still apply for the low interest loan or for CREO, but please don't come again for the technology grant so that we can serve more businesses. But we have no qualms if you're getting grants elsewhere. We have some beneficiaries that they get all the grants, right? Because they're putting themselves out there. I would be remiss to not shout out the grant resource aggregator website, Axis Helps. That's AXIShelps.org. They do the legwork of amalgamating every single grant opportunity in one place. What's the eligibility? What's the deadline? Am I a like disabled queer vet, women-owned business? They'll let you know this is how much, this is the deadline. So AccessHelps.org, they are basically doing the aggregator work so that if you don't even know where to start and you're too confused, I recommend going there. And then they'll send you, oh, you want a marketing workshop? Go to FIU. You want this? They'll point you in the right direction based on what you need. But you can absolutely stack these grants, and some of the best businesses are getting, more than one of them a year.
Okay, and on a note of people getting more than one, it's about two companies coming together. So what is there a limit on how few or a maximum on how many companies? So limit, like if I'm a one person, but I have two LLCs.
Good question,
could I merge
Khalid.
them and be the two companies myself?
So good question, Khalid. When it comes to CREO, what we're trying to really spur is like generational wealth dividends for more than one family at a time. So we have had some people who are a little sneaky and they apply and I'm like, wait, you all have the same last name. What we're really trying to do is just like create that opportunity for more than one family in business. So that if we are putting, an investment of $500,000 into this property, I'll give another shout out to, there's three gentlemen who own three different businesses. Invisio, outsource IT solutions, Building Center number 3, an architecture firm, and Zia Construction, a GC. they are going in on a building, and I can't remember their equity share, but let's say it's a $3 million building, they're each over time going to get a share of that million that they can reinvest into their business versus one person taking home all the cake. So
Okay,
we do
and-
want to see
Yeah.
disparate, unrelated ownership.
And on the flip side of that, could I gather 20 business owners and have 20 companies come in and that? Okay, so there's no.
If you can structure it and you can effectively manage it and codify all of that in your operating agreement,
Yeah.
I mean, granted, the shares will be smaller, the dividends will be smaller, like, thinking about shareholding in the stock market. But if you can effectively manage that, that is one of the concepts that we really wanted to encourage as well, whether it is like a food hall, a craft fair, like a farmer's market type setup. But I think the important point about CREO is equity, right? Are you just holding the land and then leasing it out to 20 individual entrepreneurs? Or are you giving them a slice of the property? I think if you've ever talked about like the racial wealth divide and generational wealth, it is all about equity, assets, and ownership. And so the more that we can push that versus just making more landlords.
Yeah,
So I
yeah.
think that the devil's in the details, but that's really kind of the ethos. When you apply for CREO, that's what we want people to know we're trying to encourage, right? We don't want people to be speculative. Like I know you mentioned the multi
Family.
Exactly, which
Right.
traditionally is considered a form of commercial real estate, right? However, we're looking for small business owner occupied real estate.
I understand.
So if you're on the first floor, that's great, and maybe you're using the housing component of it to turn revenue to fund the project, that's fine. But if you're applying to CREO so that you can then be an investor in a multifamily unit,
Right.
that's a little different than what we're.
This is
yeah.
not for investors. And I just also want to point out this is for Miami-Dade County. This is not
That's right.
stretching over Broward,
That's
Palm
right.
Beach, and Monroe County. The Miami Foundation is in Miami.
We are, and we like to say that we are for Greater Miami.
Okay.
That's our tag name. So, but there's not to say that there's not great resources in Broward. The Urban League of Broward has an entrepreneurship center, and they are a CDFI, which means they can do lending to small businesses. They do phenomenal work. So there's business support resources everywhere. You just have to know where to look.
Okay, I have another.
Go
on the
for it.
same note of the.
Yeah.
Okay, can I make one agreement with Craig LLC? That goes well. We've done it. I now have this asset with Craig LLC. Then I say, what you guys got going on over here? And then I get with Tamika LLC. Can I do another one?
That's a great question. So we haven't historically had this issue come up yet because a lot of the people that we were committing funding to, they're just trying to close,
Yeah.
let alone close again.
Yeah.
And as mentioned, we really want to limit each financial product to like one time. I could see an opportunity in which maybe the lead applicant is not a repeat applicant, but maybe you're a subsidiary,
Yeah.
right? So maybe you can be party to multiple transactions. But I will tell you that just getting one CREO application in and funded, we received 14 last year. We funded 5 of them. We received another 14 this year, and we're moving forward with 5 or 6 of them. So we've gotten 28 proposals over the 2 years that we've administered this. And so we'll make a funding commitment to you if you're elected and selected into the program, but then you still have to get to the closing runway,
Yeah.
which sometimes it's market conditions, it's ability to acquire financing. Some sellers just want cash, right? And there's
Yeah.
nothing we can do about that. So I would find it very very adventurous if you're
Yeah.
able to get 2 of them funded, but as long as you're not the lead applicant twice, there's probably some wiggle room there.
I get it. Okay. So I guess my biggest, this is a sidebar here. My
Yeah.
spiel is I speak for and to the real estate professionals. That's my
Yeah,
thing.
yeah.
So as realtors, because in my career, so many grants, the first time home buyer programs, all these grants come in. And as real estate pros, like especially like the newer ones, the younger ones, it doesn't make sense to us. We're like, so you want me to wait another 45 days for this money?
Exactly.
The deals don't go through, so they're less likely to do it.
That's right.
But then I'm on Miami Realtors. I'm working with these big time agents that are doing millions in production. And like Craig, like he knows about all the programs. So it's like younger me would have avoided all of these. And then I'm like, how you just said 14 applications in the year. Imagine that, so it's like they're trying to give you money, but like no one knows how to take it. So
yeah, but that's the importance of these types of conversations.
Yeah.
I think it's the importance of contracting with somebody like Craig. The fact that the Miami Foundation, a community foundation, is contracting with like a real estate advisory, like that, we historically haven't had that type of partnership, but now we need it, right? Because we're
Yeah.
giving out down payment capital,
Right.
and we need to bring the know-how to the table. I will say that we've tried to be really responsive to the timing of the real estate market because of that, right?
Yeah.
Last year year was the first year we ever offered it. I want to say there was like a 2 to 3 month delay in finding out whether you were awarded. We've tried to be really responsive. So this coming year and this past year, you apply on the 15th and you find out at the latest the 30th of the month following. But we'll reach out to you before then. We often bring people in for finalist interviews. I do want to share we have a real estate investment committee that looks at all of these deals, comprised of real estate developers, loan officers, nonprofit executives. So we're not making these decisions in isolation. All of the deals are brought to them for consideration. We'll come back if we have follow-up questions. And then as soon as you're, accepted into the program, we issue a commitment letter, which basically serves as proof of funds, not just for sellers, but also for your mortgage lender. So then you can start going out with your LOI. So if you apply on February 15th, and we'll start talking about the beginning of March, we're coming back with your finalist questionnaire, and then provided that you answer those questions to satisfaction, we'll issue a commitment letter, and then you could take that as proof of funds to a seller with an LOI. So we're trying to be a little bit speedier, but there are some things we'll never be able to overcome, right? Like the fact that sellers want all cash because they know their properties are not insurable and won't appraise. Unfortunately, the way that our funding is set up, we are going to ask for an inspection and appraisal and environmental phase one. We're going to run a lien search, right? Like
title search.
We're in the middle of a property right now where the seller is they have flipped it, but they still have open code violations for it previously being an unsafe structure. Like we're not going to dispense our funding until all of that is dealt with.
Right.
But you guys know some of these buyers, right? These speculative developer buyers, they can come with cash. They don't care if the building is unsafe because they're going to raise it anyway, right? So those are market conditions that we've learned we cannot simply compete with. But what we are doing is we're growing our relationships in the lending space. I have conversations with mission-oriented credit unions and lenders every single week trying to raise their awareness about this product. I will say that initially, I think a lot of people thought of it as like free money, and it is not, right? You mentioned Shahzad Amami earlier. She's our legal eagle. Like we only dispense funding once all of our due diligence is done, making sure that we're not just protecting ourselves, but again, we would be doing such a disservice if we extended financing to a small business that enters a facility that is unsafe, uninsurable, or unfit to be occupied. And so I think it's been a little bit of education between us and the lenders, right? They've never seen a product like this before, but at the end of the day, we want to see more representation in this space, right? Like commercial real estate, there's so much literature out there that is now like the fastest way to help with like Black and Latino and BIPOC, generational wealth. So, the little that we can do, $500,000 into the deal, that's just what we're trying to accomplish.
Right.
This is so great for just real estate agents as a whole, because there's a community of realtors that are just like not sure what to do in this market. Loan applications are low. People aren't buying houses like they used to. So it's like, what do we do? Well, that's a great time to kind of pivot into a new industry like commercial real estate. That's what I'm doing. I'm learning commercial real estate. He's seen it. I'm wiggling in some deals. But this like opens me up to now I can go talk to the local man who owned the store for the last 20 years, but he's been renting it for the last 20 years.
Renting it month to month.
Exactly.
And I'm like, oh my God, I've heard some horror stories.
Yeah. So it's situations like that. When you see a store that may be going out of business, you could talk to the owner and find out, is it just the rent or what is it? You'll find out it's usually just the rent is so high now. So let me help you buy something.
And a lot of these deals, I'll also tell you, we're exploring off-market possibilities as well, because the market, the ones that are listed are going to have the most speculation from the aforementioned cash buyers, right? But our entities, especially the ones who are doing community land trusts or co-ops, they know that they can wait a little bit longer because they don't need to act now. They're trying to build something for their community. So then they're conferring with the sellers who might not be ready to step. They're waiting to see what happens in the market. For the right price, they're willing to let it go, right? And then you don't have to deal with the competition from being publicly on the MLS. And so I would not underestimate off-market deals. We're seeing that as a really successful strategy as well.
Right. Yeah, that's awesome.
Go ahead. I have a question for you after this. How did you find out about all of this?
Oh, this is great. Because I was wondering, how do I wiggle in Melissa?
Yeah. I thought about her when I was talking about the work in Overtown.
So I have a friend. Her name is Melissa, and Pierre Kelly, and she was just like, Craig, listen, there's some opportunities out there. We should jump on them. And I was like, okay, Melissa, let's do it. You know? And so I said, you go get them, and I'll be the talent. And so that's what we did. So we worked well together in that respect. So yes, Melissa's kind of like behind the scenes setting things up. I've known about the Miami Foundation since I was in high school because I actually received a CAP scholarship to go to college.
Oh, fantastic!
Yeah. So they also provide scholarships for college and things of that nature. It's the CAP scholarship. So if you got a senior in college, go check out the Miami Foundation as well. But just going back to so many aspects that the Miami Foundation does, but I really didn't know about this opportunity until Melissa brought it to me. So grateful to her for that, and grateful for the Miami Foundation giving me the opportunity. But they're a great organization. I've known Rebecca Fishman-Lipsey for a while as well. So there's many people that are attached to the organization that I think are doing wonderful work for many years. This organization has been around, so grateful for it. Yeah,
Appreciate that.
Yeah.
Okay, that's cool.
Yeah.
Is there so can you speak on like what would be causes for someone to be denied an application?
Absolutely. A handful of things. I think we've touched on them throughout the course of
Yeah.
the conversation. So,
Mhm.
like, one of them I think is the finances. Like, are you in a position to transition to ownership, right? I have a handful of applicants that are more like startup nonprofits. Their annual budget is like $300,000 or less. I think that just simply the finances don't really line up. Some of those organizations don't have a history of paying rent at all, right? And that's why they want to buy a building. But I think what we see more successfully is organizations that have a track record of, for example, Teen Upward Bound, right, has been paying rent for 20 years. They successfully have a lease line item. They're accustomed to paying $4,000, $5,000, $6,000, $8,000 a month, right? So that's an expense that they've budgeted for. So finances is a big thing.
So it matters to you have to make over a certain amount.
You don't have to. There's no requirement, but
Yeah.
I tend to find, and what I've been like, we don't have a minimum threshold.
Okay.
But what I have found in reviewing these applications is that the smaller nonprofits with smaller budgets, they just simply don't have the bandwidth or the wherewithal to cover the debt service
Got
for
it.
a mortgage.
You have to be able to
Yeah.
handle the mortgage we're putting you in.
Absolutely.
That's
And
what
not
it's
just
about.
that, but
Okay.
also all your other programmatic expenses. So, for instance, one thing the senior lenders will look for in the nonprofits is that they have diversification of revenue. If you're exclusively relying on grants and contributions, that can be challenging. So, for example, are you going to lease out a portion of the site and have some rental income? One of the nonprofits that we funded, Americans for Immigrant Justice, has a lot of government contract reimbursement work. So, revenue diversification is a value not just for us, but the senior lender.
Okay.
And the same thing extends to businesses, right? If you're a small business that's home-based and you've never had a rent line item, we look
Right.
for that,
Yeah.
right?
Right.
And then we've also seen some applicants that are accustomed to paying $2,000 to $4,000 a month in rent, according to their financial statements, but their mortgage is going to net them to like a $9,000 or a $10,000 a month mortgage. And you guys know this, that mortgage is just principal and interest,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
The insurance situation,
it's
you guys
crazy.
know how it is on
Yeah.
housing. Just imagine how it
It's
is.
crazy
Commercial, I can
commercial
imagine,
as
yeah.
well.
It's exactly, and there's so many other things you need to insure for on the commercial side because you have liability, you have non-employees on the premises. We have all types of certificates of insurance that we require
Right.
to lend. So the finances is a big piece, but I'll also speak on like the lack of understanding about the collective ownership model, like you mentioned, Khalid. I have people who are like me and my so and so, and I'm like, well, how is that creating
Yeah, it's not
generational
help. It's
wealth
not. Yeah.
for like multiple parties.
Right.
So we
Right.
do get some confusion. I've had some applications where they only want to have one owner and then they're going to lease out the facility. So like they apply, thinking that it's multiple ownership. I mean, it's just one landlord. And what we really want to avoid is repeating those threads of, negligent commercial landlords, creating wealth and equity for more than one owner. I'll also say the neighborhoods matter, but to a lesser extent. I get a lot of questions. They're like, well, the property is across the street from West Perrine. And I'm like, we don't want to quibble over that. What we think is important is that you're not trying to buy in like the heart of Coral Gables
Right.
or
Pinecrest or someplace.
exactly. We are going to probably expand the communities for the next and third final year of the program. I'm going to keep that under wraps, so you have a little surprise to look forward to. But
right.
we're regularly expanding based on community
Did I see a
input.
tear there for a second?
I will say, for example, like we got really great feedback from the residents of West Coconut Grove, right?
Okay.
They were initially omitted, so we added them this year as a qualifying community area. Not just for CREO, but if you're in any of these community areas, you get a couple extra points on your grant and your loan as well, right? Making sure that we funnel funds to those historically underinvested areas. So we get folks, though, who would like have no affiliation to the community that are trying to buy. And so I need to understand, like, what is your relationship with the tenants going to be like? What is prompting you to invest in this particular neighborhood at this juncture? We recognize that gentrification and displacement is real in a lot of the communities that we establish as priority. So what we're trying to do is like root the businesses that have been there in a permanent spot so that they don't get it out. And if we get an applicant that looks like it could potentially be extractive, we try to be very diligent in that. So we're not just looking at financial underwriting, it's also the social bottom line.
I understand. Okay.
So what's new on the horizon for the Miami Foundation? 2024 is going to be a big year. I'm going to call it the year of new beginnings and things of that nature. Anything exciting in 2024?
Yeah, so, as I foreshadowed during this conversation, it's the third and final year of the program. Wells Fargo Open for Business is a 3-year initiative, so it will be coming to a close. We want to make sure to steward the funds and invest in more businesses. To date, we've awarded about $8 million to nearly 300 small businesses and nonprofits, which
Congratulations.
is incredible. Thank you. So we want to make sure that we steward the remainder of those grants. I think that fundraising, like any nonprofit organization looking to the horizon, where can we get more philanthropic support for what we want to work on next? I think there are some untapped areas of interest for me personally. I think workers and workers' rights, especially in a state like Florida, remain really unparalleled, right? Like, we talk about housing affordability, but the underside of that iceberg is wage stagnation, right?
Absolutely.
And equity in pay. And I also think that just rights, right? Like organizing, joining labor unions. I think we're seeing a lot of wins elsewhere in the United States. As mentioned, I lived in Chicago for a decade and a half.
Yeah.
So to come back to Florida and witness what we're experiencing, I might personally, want to tackle those issues right alongside minority small business entrepreneurship. So we'll keep putting fingers crossed and feelers out there and see what we can do next. But I think I really just want to close the door on year 3 of Wells Fargo Open for Business first.
Nice. Well, I definitely concur with you because, being on the Affordable Housing Advisory Board for Miami-Dade County, I tell people all the time that wages is really the issue because we can talk about affordability for housing. Miami is not going to crash. I got this one guy that comes on my Facebook page, and he's like, oh, yeah, do anything that realtors tell you to do, right? It's just for their pockets. I'm like, dude, this is not 2008.
It is not.
No.
It's not 2009. It is not happening. There will not be a crash in South Florida. You heard it here first from Craig and them, but it is not happening.
This is not 2008 where we had the lax underwriting.
Yeah.
No, this is straight cash buyers that are pushing the ceiling of cash buyers don't pay attention to mortgage interest rates.
Yeah. It's just Florida real estate just makes sense to a lot of people. And what it is, it's just bigger money's coming in. Like, we just received Messi. We just received Jeff Bezos. These are billionaires.
Kenneth Griffin.
Right.
I don't even know who that is, but
Well, you bet you should.
Ken Griffin. He came down from New York. He's
Chicago.
Was it Chicago?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, Chicago, and he basically has this fund, this tech fund, right?
He actually operates the world's most profitable hedge fund,
There you
Citadel.
go.
so you got to imagine what calibers like that coming into a city can do, because mind you, they'll buy their personal home, they'll do some investments, but they're also going to do some development. They're going to call people like Craig and say, I need this many square feet.
I think Ken Griffin just already purchased a portion of the Dolphins in F1 already.
Yeah, and they're building out their brand new office building, and all of those types of investments kind of change the game in terms of who's participating, who are the key players, and I think that's why we really have to make sure in this new wave of Miami's economic development, like who's looking out for the small guy, right?
Yeah, that's what it is.
You can outsource and you can create a startup for doing half these things, but if I can't find my cafecito, my croquetica, like, I don't want to go somewhere where like everything is like, startup.io.
Yeah.
So that I will say in terms of the horizon of our work, Craig, I think me personally, I'd like to make sure that we're looking out for the small guy.
Right.
Everything that made Miami such an attractive place to be and to do work, right? And I just talked about, all those Cuban things, but just think about like your Haitian food spot, right? Your Dominican barber shop. If all of that becomes like chains, big box retailers, like we're going to lose the cultural fabric of what Miami's special. So I'd like to see more diverse small business development and economic development. When we think about what economic development means, making sure that it's like an ecosystem. You got the big fish, you got the small fish, you got the corals. If you have all sharks, well, that ecosystem's gonna die.
Right.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
that's how it's looking, because even in Miami Gardens, when the flea market went down, that was a bunch of very small businesses that are gone, but nothing but big businesses came in.
So to be fair, the Hialeah Opalaka flea market still exists. A lot of people don't know that. We actually awarded a grant to the city of Opalaka to award some of those flea market vendors replacement inventory grants
That's
to
cool.
kind of ease the burden. But a lot of people, we actually did a site visit. They're a little bit like maybe 2 to 3 blocks further north. They're all indoors now, but we did a site visit there a couple of months ago, and their foot traffic is abysmal, right? People think that they shuttered and closed their doors entirely. They said that usually the holidays, when people come in from the summers, from the islands, that they used to do big numbers. Everybody think that they closed, right? Like entirely, and that they don't exist anymore. And so, but to your point, I feel like we're seeing this left and right, you know, the swap meet, the places where you used to go to buy things are slowly disappearing, and then everyone's, you know, Target, Amazon.
Yeah, it's all getting upgraded.
Walmart.
That's what's happening. It's like if I open this window, I'll probably see 3 cranes. You know, like everywhere you go, it's just everything that was once old, like it's just getting spruced up. But that's because that's just the money that we're seeing now. So the people that grew up here, it's expensive because we're still on the same wages we were getting. But the people coming in, they're like, that's it? That's all you want for this?
Correct.
So it's just a hard area. But what you guys are doing is the perfect, I feel, thing to it. So us as realtors just need to do our part to learn what you're doing and how to do it so we can educate the public, which I feel is our true job, and help this get done.
I'm so appreciative. Every time I meet realtors, in particular real estate agents, I say, you know, you probably have clients that could benefit from this. People who are looking to get out of a lease to own, but it's really that upfront capital, which can be the barrier. So happy to serve and kind of be that little piece of the building blocks.
Yeah. This is good. This is good.
Definitely wages and financial literacy is going to be key in South Florida. You got to have those two things, especially from a credit standpoint.
That's right.
You know, so kudos to you on the wages tip, because that definitely needs to take flight, and someone needs to fight that fight, as well as financial literacy.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Anything on the horizon for financial literacy?
You know,
and BIPOCs.
I would say that we support organizations that have been doing that work for years, right? Like Branches is our small business partner, and they have a phenomenal micro business program, but they've been doing financial literacy and family financial health for ages, right? Yeah. So I think it's a big matter of supporting the organizations already doing that work. Catalyst, you know, I want to give them a shout out. They are a great partner of ours. They're actually leading that North Miami co-op purchase effort to try to create co-op ownership opportunities in that corridor. But another thing that they do are they're incubating worker-owned businesses, right? So those are businesses where you don't just have a head honcho at the top and all of your workers. The workers are owners as well, and that basically means that the profit dividends are then shared more equally among a worker-owned, and elsewhere it's known as a co-op, right? A worker-owned co-op. And the research shows that these companies are more profitable. The worker owners feel that they have more at stake. They're more willing to, like, you know, work for the benefit of the company. So Catalyst has been incubating several of those worker-owned enterprises. They're really common, for instance, in, you know, the healthcare space, janitorial, landscaping, etc. So just thinking about, like, if workers had a bigger share of the profit and the wages in some of these larger companies, I give them a lot of credit for what they're doing in the cooperative economic space, and we know what works, right? Like that's the other thing. Like being in Chicago for a decade and a half, my role before this, I was doing Black and Latino small business in 12 U.S. cities, including like Oakland, Boston, Chicago. Like we know what works. We just have to apply some of that playbook down here. Hence, collective real estate ownership. It's going to be, I think, scary at first because we haven't done it yet, but we know what works. We know what helps to increase wages, to increase ownership, to reduce the racial wealth gap, and we're going to do it.
Yeah, awesome. I like it.
All right. Well, as we wrap up, you want to give us your contact information and any final words?
I'm just full of gratitude today. I think thank you all for, you know, thinking of me for this opportunity. I love to talk, clearly. But,
it's perfect.
No, I'm just really grateful. So again, my name is Brittany. The website, miamiopenforbusiness.org. If you literally Google Miami Open for Business, it will take you there. You can contact me directly. I think the most important thing is to shout out our deadlines for next year. So we actually have a mixer this year in 2 weeks coming up. If you're thinking about applying for CREO but don't have a business partner yet, or you want to ask current CREO beneficiaries how the program is going, on Monday, December 18th, we're hosting a mixer at Red Rooster Overtown, so you can mix and mingle. Maybe you want to meet over like a community area. Maybe you want to talk to one of the grantees that I've shouted out so far. And then, as Craig mentioned, January 6th and 7th of this coming year, we're going to have our 2-day commercial real estate workshop. That's when we open up the contract, we open up, you know, Crexy, we literally tell you how to get into this game. And then if you're interested in applying, the application will open in January. The first deadline is February 15th, and the last deadline is going to be April 15th. 2024 for CREO. So mark your calendars. And
what about the other programs?
Yeah, great question. So the micro grant opens in March, and it'll be due on May 31st. The ABLE loan, that's that low interest loan for vehicles, remodeling, or inventory, will also open in March, and it'll be open nearly through the end of the year, probably late September.
All right, awesome.
And then we'll put a bow on it and tell Wells Fargo what we did.
That's
Nice.
right. Maybe they'll give you some more money.
I hope so.
Ojalá.
That's all I hope so. Yeah, I hope so.
Sounds good. Well, thank you, Brittany, for coming out and
Craig.
joining
Thank you,
me
Cleve.
and
This is
KB.
great.
And we look forward to maybe getting Brenda on. You'll bring you
Yes.
both back.
Yeah, I'd love that because, we just scratched the surface on what needs to happen on a policy landscape. This is a 3-year program. We're going to help a finite number of entrepreneurs. But what we really need to do is change the system so that it's friendlier for small businesses and specifically small businesses of color.
This is the first I've heard of anything like this, so this is revolutionary. So I'm glad to be a
Thank
part of
you.
it and witness it. Thank you, Craig.
Hey, no problem.
Thank you for
Thank
bringing
you.
me on
Thank
this.
you for having
Craig's
me.
a good guy. Craig's all right.
Say it loud. For
Craig, and
Into
them.
the camera.
Yeah, Craig and them is all right.
I need
Oh,
to hear
man's
Brittany
right
say
here.
it, though.
Yeah.
Oh, I love her.
Craig is all right.
All right, sounds good. Well, thank you guys both, and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you.
All right.